Now it's time to get started with Adobe Illustrator, and in this movie, I'm going to be walking you through some of the basics of the application. Before we get started, let's take a brief tour of the interface. Up here at the top, we have the standard Adobe menu bar, so when you hear me say go to things like the File menu, this is what I'm talking about, Select, Same, etc. This is the same basic navigational paradigm that you'll have throughout the entire Adobe Creative Cloud suite. Underneath the menu bar, you'll see these little icons here, which allow you to do various things like go to Adobe Bridge, open things in Adobe Stock, arrange the various documents in certain ways, different patterns, so forth. You can turn on something called GPU Performance. If you want to learn more about that, check out my Illustrator CC Updates course. Directly underneath this is the control panel. The control panel has lots of different options that are going to change based on the tool you have selected at any given time. So for instance, right now I have the selection tool selected. So most of these correspond to me having something selected on screen. So you'll see things like the fill color, the stroke color, which by the way refers to whatever the object is filled with, the color that's filled with, or stroked with, the outside, the border, basically. You also have the ability to control things like text from up here. You'll see when I click on the type tool that it automatically gives me character and paragraph options. Now, what you see across here when you select a tool may look a little bit different than mine because I'm recording on a smaller sized screen. As you change the screen size inside of Illustrator, more options will be shown or hidden depending on whether or not you're shrinking or going larger. So for instance, on a larger screen, the character and paragraph panels might actually be a drop-down menu like this, rather than a set of links that you click on like this. This is all done to save space. If you feel like you need to customize this so that you see certain things all the time, this little icon here will drop down and show you everything that's currently being shown inside of the control panel. You can turn things on and off by making sure there's a check mark next to it if you want it, or turning it off by clicking it and turning the check mark off. Over here on the left, we have the Tools panel, which includes selection tools at the top. We also have text and vector shape options here. So we have the Type tool, Rectangle tool, which holds things like the rounded rectangle, ellipse, polygon, star, and flare. We've also got, and you can see here when I click on this new tool inside of Illustrator, it's called the Shaper tool. The first time you click on this, it's going to launch this. It's sort of like a little tutorial on how to use the Shaper tool. This is a new tool that was introduced in CC 2015, the release that happened around the time of the Adobe Max conference. This is, of course, a brand new tool, but you can see more of it in action inside of my Illustrator Essential Training course and also my Creative Cloud Updates course. I'm going to close this now, and you can see here we also have the Eraser tool, a brush, and a Line Segment tool. Underneath there, we have things like Rotate, which also houses things like Reflect. We have a Scale, Shear, and Reshape tool. Anytime you want to see all of the tools, find a tool with a little triangle in the bottom right corner, click and hold. It'll show you all of those tools. So the tools here also, when you hover over them, have a keyboard shortcut associated with them. And it would be a good idea for you to start committing some of the more common ones to memory, like T for type, or V for selection, or P for pen tool. All of those make it easier for you to switch tools on the fly without having to look for them over there in the Tools panel. It also ensures that as they update the interface for Adobe Illustrator, even if they moved your favorite tool inside of another toolbox or further down in the Tools panel, that you still know how to access it via the keyboard and you don't have to go hunting for it over here. At the bottom of the Tools panel, you'll see things like your fill color and your stroke color. To target the fill or the stroke, click on it. So when I click the stroke, see how it comes in the foreground there? When I click on the fill, it puts the stroke in the background. You can choose to fill it with a solid color, a gradient color, or no color. Down here are the drawing modes: draw normal, draw behind, and draw inside. All of those are covered in depth in my Illustrator CC Essential Training course. All right, out here, this is known as the artboard, and the artboard is actually what we're going to use to navigate our way through this document. Over here are all the panels in Illustrator. By default, they're collapsed into icon form. You can expand those with this little arrow right here, and that's going to bring up all the panels for you. Anytime you hear me say, let's go to the blank panel, I'm just saying find that word. So let's say it's the brushes panel. Find brushes, click on it, it activates that panel. Down towards the bottom of this is where you'll see the artboards. I'll move these out so you can see them. Anytime you move panels around or you just want to get back to where you came from, go up to this little jump menu and hit Reset Essentials, or whatever the workspace is called at the time, and that will put everything back in its place as it should be. Now, I'm going to go right here and open up the Artboards panel again. Drag it out so you can see it. In the Artboards panel, we have several things that we want to get to. So let's go right here. Let's double click on Drawing Shapes. Double click right out to the right-hand side of it. That's going to take you to a blank canvas, but this is where we're going to learn how to draw shapes in Illustrator. Go over to the left, select the rectangle tool, and then just come out on your artboard here. And right here at this drop down, click and just pick a color. Doesn't matter what color it is. And then just start drawing by clicking and dragging your mouse. That's as simple as it gets. If you want to draw a perfect square, hold down the Shift key while you're drawing. If you would like to draw out from the center point, go right to the center point you're trying to meet, hold down the Option key on the Mac, the Alt key on the PC, and click and drag out, and it will draw from the center point. Holding down Shift and the Option or Alt key will constrain the proportions and draw directly from the center. Once you've drawn something out, if you want to remove it, hit the Delete key, and it will be removed. If you want to draw out another kind of shape, play around with something like the ellipse tool. Here we go. Just draw out as many of those as you want. Now, if you want to modify these shapes after the fact, you can do so by grabbing the Selection tool. Notice that on the circle, you get this little bar. When you hover over this dot on the side, it looks almost like a retro gaming character appears. You might know exactly who I'm talking about, you might not. And when you grab this, you can actually turn this into like a pie graph, making it super simple for you to create things like infographics and stuff like that in Illustrator. The rectangles that you draw in Illustrator automatically have these little dots in each corner indicating that you can grab them and click and drag to round off the corners. You can also just double click one of those things and it will open up with the transform panel, and you can change the exact dimensions of the corners from down here as well. Pretty cool. If you don't want the transform panel on the screen, just click the little X and it will go away. And there we go. All right, let's go to the Adding Color section. Inside of the Adding Color section, what we're going to do is target specific things and then give them a color. Right now, all you're seeing is a transparent object with a black stroke applied to it. So here's what we're going to do. Target this little mustache down here. Hold down the Shift key to select both pieces. And then the first thing we're going to do is come over here and we're going to hit the flip-flop icon. When we do that, the mustache turns to a solid color. So we took the color off of the stroke and applied it directly to the fill. Now let's do the same thing up here. Let's grab the outer portion of the hat. And if we flip-flop again, what happens? Ooh, it turns into that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to undo that and we're going to give it a color. So how do we give it a color? Well, we target the fill first, then go over here to the swatches panel. And in the swatches panel, we can find a color, something kind of like that. There you go. You get the idea. And now let's just go through and make some changes to these. So we're going to put these as a fill color, make them white. There we go. Just some accents there. And you'll notice also that this actually has like a border around the outside of it, but it's grouped together, which makes it a little bit difficult to see. So here's what we're going to do here. We're going to double click. And that's going to enter us into what is called isolation mode. In this isolation mode, what we're able to do is flip-flop those, take that off, so it looks a little bit more natural. Now, how did I do that? Let's go back. I selected this object altogether. Double-clicking it allows me to go inside of a group. So there's two things that are grouped in here. Clicking that allows me to select it. Flip-flopping the colors, selecting the stroke, and applying none. Allows me to do that right there. Now this down here, flip-flopping that. Now it's looking a little better. Now the Parmigiano's text down here, that's all one thing. But we're going to change the colors. There we go. Pizzeria and Deli. Let's remove that stroke and add a little green. There we go. The best thing about Illustrator is if you make a mistake, Command or Control Z usually will get you back out of it without any trouble. If you don't want to do the trouble of double clicking things like that to get a hold of something, press the letter A on your keyboard. That switches you to something called the Direct Selection tool, which enables you to make a selection directly within even a group. So here, for instance, click here. That's going to select that object that I wanted. And I can change the color of it to, let's say, white. There we go. And then these little highlights here, we can change those to something kind of like an off-white color. There we go. And there we go. So there is applying color. Let's go to setting type. We have two types of text in Illustrator. We have what's called point text and what's called area text. Point text is actually pretty simple. You grab the type tool, you point your mouse, you click, and you type. That's point text. Once you've made your text out on the screen, you can choose the options up here. So you can increase the size, you can change the font, you can change the style, and you can also set paragraph and character options as well. If you want to commit to the text you've been typing, press the Command or Control key and the Enter key, and that will automatically commit. You can also just grab the selection tool and click away from it. It will do the same thing. If you want to do area text, you click and drag a box the size that you want it to be, then you type something like that, and as you can see, it automatically wraps to the next line. The main difference between point type and area type is that when you have area type, the text will automatically flow based on the box that you've created. When you have point type, it's going to continue to go and go and go until you press the return key, making it very hard for you to get really nice even lines. So my recommendation is if you're just doing one line, like a headline, use point text. If it needs to be anything like a paragraph, you need to use area text. You can also convert after the fact. So right here, if I wanted this to be point text, I could go to type, convert to point type, and it's going to convert that for me. If I want this to be area type, I go to type, convert to area type. Now I can increase the size of the box, and I could continue typing. Or if I want to make it back again, type, convert to point type. Very simple. So you can go back and forth between those two things. Let's double click right here on importing graphics. So we need a graphic right here on the side. Let's go to the file menu and choose place. This is how you bring in graphics. So chapter 5, let's go down and let's bring in the pizza. We're going to make sure link is checked down here at the bottom. Why? Because we want to link to that object rather than embedding it into the Illustrator file. Linking to it makes sure that that file displays in the Illustrator file, but also doesn't bulk up the Illustrator's file size. So let's go ahead and hit place. I'll get what's called a loaded cursor, and I have two options here. I can just click to place it, or I can come up here to this intersection and click to draw out a box, something like that. Now I can also resize this, of course. Holding down my shift key constrains the proportions. And then once you get that in there, what I'm going to do is line it up with the edge of this artboard. So we'll do this right here. Align horizontal right. There we go. Now it overlaps, so we're going to have to do something called changing the stacking order. Very easy to do. Right click on the object, choose a range, and either bring to front, bring forward, send backward, or send to back. Bring to front means bring it all the way to the front. Bring forward means step it forward one place in the stacking order. Send backward means send it back one place in the stacking order. Send to back, go to the very back. We want this in the very back. So there we go. And now we have our image inside of there. Looks really good. Now, a couple of courses you might want to check out to further your Illustrator knowledge. Number 1, Introducing Illustrator with Deke McClellan. This is a great get yourself started Illustrator course that's going to take you very quickly through the basics of Illustrator, just enough to get you started. If you want the bigger Illustrator training, check out my Illustrator CC Essential Training course, which takes you through most of the heavy-hitting features of Illustrator and teaches you how to use them in a practical way. If you want the super end-all be-all Illustrator course, check out Deke McClellan's Illustrator CC one-on-one series. This goes all the way from fundamentals to advanced, covers several hours of material, and this is pretty much the go-to resource for everything Illustrator. All right, that's going to wrap up our Getting Started with Illustrator section. Hopefully now we're ready to start tackling a project of our own.